Well, God bless you all on this Friday afternoon uh, for another clergy conversation. And today is a very special clergy conversation for myself because I'm interviewing one whom I've admired and looked up to since I was literally a kid. And I call one of God's greatest preachers, greatest closers, and one of the most underrated preachers in the country. That's now
That's
he's
very
not going to
kind.
say he's not going to say anything about that, but I'm going to say it because I'm like a kid in the candy store today. I'm getting to interview one of my mentors and heroes, and like I said, one of my favorite preachers who I listen to every week. Every Sunday, I listen to this guy when I'm done with church. So I'm so happy to welcome who I call Uncle Jeff, Pastor Jeff Mitchell, the proud pastor of Tabitha Baptist Church in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. So, thank you for coming on today.
Thank you for having me, Brother Chris. I really appreciate the uh, the invite, man, and I've been looking forward to it. So I'm just glad to be here.
Yes, sir. So let's open up. So just tell us a little bit about yourself. Give us some background.
Um, I'm uh, nearly 60 years old at this point, but I was a young fella. Grew up in Musgrave, Oklahoma, out there. Attended John Marshall High School, left there, went on to Washburn University in Topeka, Kansas, and then also OBU. Uh, and then met a lady. My wife met her, Rhonda Mitchell. We've been married 34 years and had three kids, and I think six grandchildren. And then I've been at the Tabitha Church came here when I was 29 years old.
Wow.
So almost going on into my 30th year here at the church, and the Lord has been good, and it's just a matter of each day trying to be better, trying to do better, and to know God better. But
Yes,
that's a little bit about me.
yes, sir. When we're gonna get to how you got to Tabitha. So you grew up in Fairview.
At the Fairview Church.
Yes. So talk to us just about growing up at Fairview, which was back then and still now one of the leading churches in Oklahoma City. So talk to us about growing up in Fairview. Then of course you're there with a young Pop Reed. So talk to us about the Red Church.
Yeah, those were some of the greatest times. When I came there, of course, was about 20 or 21 years old, so I didn't necessarily grow up. I grew up with my stepdad's church, which was called Prayer Band.
Okay.
But from there, I attended along with my brother Kim. He took me to Fairview Church one Sunday, and I'd never left since. I mean, because of the dynamic preaching and the ministry of Dr. Reed. And so growing up there, I learned everything that I know about church life and how to deal with people, how to love people and shepherd people, and the importance of that and the significance of that. So growing up there, you meet so many people because he's such a magnetic figure that a lot of people come through there, and that's one of the things I was really blessed with hear some of the greatest preachers of our day come through the Fairview Church, and how that rubbed off on me, and then just being there and watching how Pastor Reed would maneuver and work with things and situations, and eventually, of course, even how he prepared his messages. But growing up in Fairview was an experience that I would not trade for anything in the world.
Yes, sir. And you talked about some of the preachers that you were able to hear. Who were some of those preachers that you were able to hear come through Fairview who really made that lasting impression upon you?
Oh yeah, Dr. H.B. Charles, Senior,
Yes, sir.
as well as Junior. When going being in Fairview, Dr. Charles would bring HB Junior along with him, and they had to put him on a little pedestal stand so they could see him beyond the pulpit. But he would come through there. Uh, all of the giants of that day. Many of them that I can't. I think Brother Curry, Pastor Curry, come through
Okay,
there.
yes, sir.
Um, uh, and even now, he has some of the greats. He has the pastor from Houston. Uh, at good Lord, my mind. You know what I'm talking about.
Oh, you talking about Marcus Cosby?
Yes, sir. He
Yes,
comes
sir.
through there. I had an opportunity to meet with him, and even just some of the guys in our state, all of them, Chappelle, Pastor Chappelle, senior and junior.
Yes, sir.
So it was a lot. Even the pastor that who used to who was former pastor of the church where you serve, brother Knox.
Okay.
So all of those guys, I had a chance to actually meet them and draw from them
Right.
when they would come in to preach, and it's been a tremendous experience, tremendous. And those are just some off the top of my head right now, but there are many more.
Right. And so when you were able to, glean from those senior sages, those preachers that you're talking about, who you really were encouraged by, what were just some of the things that they shared with you, they spoke to you, that really influenced you? Like what nuggets did they say that really, has helped you then and is still helping you to this present day?
Well, I think one of the biggest nuggets is how they put an emphasis on education and or preparation,
Yes, sir.
because we're called into this ministry, but we're not called to just come. We also, it's a calling to prepare.
Yes,
And
sir.
one of the things that they that I can remember that they did was emphasize the need to prepare, because Sundays come fast. They come
Yes, sir.
very, very fast, and you have to have a process by which every Sunday that you're able to stand and give the very best that you have. So one of the things they dealt with that I thought was very instrumental was the idea of preparing. Some of the other things is of how to shepherd the flock. Uh, One of the things that Pastor Reed taught us about, even something as simple as being over the money. You don't want to get your hand out too involved in that kind of thing, because that
Right.
can compromise your stance as the pastor. And how to love unruly people and those kinds of things he instilled in us, and some of these that came along, uh, uh, to visit the church and preach. I was able to glean that from them as well. I even remember uh, because I served as his assistant to the pastor, and I remember that my job then was, when we had a preacher to come, I would have to go get him from the hotel and bring him to the church, make sure they take him out to eat. And one of the times, one of the things I remember quite vividly is H.B. Charles Jr., of course, picking him up, and we would be about and going to and from, and just the sheer amount of time that he put into a message. I was able to, at one point, he had his computer, and he allowed me to know and what his processes was. And that was way before I went to anybody's seminary, and that was a very lasting impression on me as
Yes,
well.
sir.
Yeah.
And so then talk to us about when you get the call to preach, like what the experience was, and then what was your when was your first sermon?
The experience was, I was in a place I had no business being. The Lord had been dealing with me, of course, and I pretty much knew that that's where it was headed. But I was in a place, it's probably sitting at a bar, as it were,
Hmm.
and about to take a drink, and of the Lord began to deal with me, and I ended up because he showed me clearly, this is what I want you to do. I didn't want to preach,
Right.
primarily because I had an older brother preaching, stepfather was preaching, and I just didn't even like the idea of what all of that would bring. And so I didn't want to do that. But sitting at that bar that day, the Lord clearly spoke to me and showed me that this is what I want you to do. And he took the desire for me to even be there. He took that away. I ended up sitting the drink down, getting up, leaving the place.
Wow.
And that next Sunday, I went to the Lord's church and got it right with the Lord. I went down at the Fairview church and shared with Pastor Reed what I felt like the Lord was leading me to do. And so that call had been upon me, but it came sort of to a head that night. And of course, I've never looked back since.
And what was your first sermon?
Blinded by the light, Acts 9.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that was what it was.
I guess that fit right in, didn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It fit right in, and I was able to. It was bits and pieces. I'm ashamed of it even right now, but that's all I had at the time. So I preached that first sermon, and then I was fortunate enough because of who Pastor Reed was. Some people around our city would give me opportunities to come and preach and share, and actually, as it were, to continue to practice on their people. But um, that's what the first sermon was about: blinded by the light. When Paul was knocked from the beast. I can't hear you. I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
I hear you now. Yes.
Okay. So let me ask this question then. When you were preaching at Fairview, when you started preaching at Fairview, what were just some of those early days like preaching at Fairview?
Oh man, it was. On the one hand, it was exciting to see Pastor Reed do what he did. It was because I felt like there was no better preacher in America than Dr. Reed at that, especially during those days. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm right here.
Okay. But I think the excitement of being in such a place was was dynamic, and then the fear of preaching in a place like that, being a young preacher, and of course, I told you in Fairview Church, we listen. We knew up front they didn't want to hear us. We ain't had that much. We didn't have nothing to say that much, anyway. And so the fear would be on Pastor Reed's a dynamic preacher, and then here we come. Uh, and I can remember Sunday evenings. That's when we would get our opportunity to preach. Are you there?
We technical difficulty. Okay, we back now.
Okay. Sunday evenings is when we would get our opportunity to preach. And of course, we would preach on Sunday. We would take turns, but we had a class that Pastor Reed would teach us on Sunday evenings because there were so many of us. We had to come to class. You didn't come to class, you didn't preach. You didn't come to class, you didn't. And so that too was a form of letting you know that you need to be prepared before you stand before the people of God. And so on Sunday evenings at 7 o'clock, it would be about 15 or 20 people there. But these were those who prayed for us and who helped to mold us. I can remember some of their names at the Fairview Church: Brother Anderson Davis, Sister Holloway, Sister Hattie Marsh, some of those who would come and give support, Mama Woody. But they didn't necessarily want to hear us. They just came to the Lord's house. But it became a thing where they were able to help to shape and mold us and to be in the because some of the comments weren't all that wonderful, but you had to live through that and preach through that. And the comments were, they varied from no, we don't want to hear that child to the fact that well, just pray for him. They try. kind of thing. But you had to live through that, and you would hear that kind of thing, and that only made you a stronger preacher because it gave you more determination to be uh, to be what God had called you to be. But I wouldn't change it, like I said, for the world.
Yes, sir. And so when you went to school, college, to get your education, how was going to school and preaching? Or did you preach? Did you start preaching before college, or did you start preaching after college?
I started preaching when I returned from college.
Okay.
I had been away 2 years so in college. I played football. I went to Washburn on a football scholarship, and I didn't accept the call until I came back home, and that's when it was. And so even preaching, going to OBU and School of Religion and all of those places, I had a full time job and going to school and going to church, and so that was uh, again some of my most formative years as well, because that required discipline and being supportive of the ministry of Pastor Reed and the Fairview Church, as well as um, school, as well as your job. I was a pretty busy young fella back then.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And so when you were starting preaching, what were the, because of some of the stories that we've heard from you, Uncle G, Pastor Gaddis, and so many other guys being associates at Fairview, what were just those years of how was it being an associate at Fairview? You know, what type of training did Pop Reed instill in you guys that helped you all even now? What was it like being one of his sons in the ministry?
Well, I can tell you some of the training was one of the things Pastor Reed has always said is make friends with books. Make friend, let books become your friends because they will never leave you nor forsake you. And so we took that mantra. And but growing up at the Fairview Church, he again, we had the classes, and you were required to attend Sunday school. You were required to attend church services wherever the church was. You were required to do that, and I take that with me even today. I don't understand a lot of the young guys who it has changed now to where I go to church if I want to, and if I don't want to, then I'll see you when I see you. Well, I don't even have any place to put something like that, because at the Fairview Church growing up, we were required.
Mm,
You needed to be there, and it wasn't always just for Pastor Reed, but it was so that the people you can get in, you could get their understanding to know that you are faithful, that you would be faithful to the cause, and like I said, it wouldn't be but about 20, 15, 20 people there on Sunday evening, but you needed to come. We looked forward to that. So growing up under him, he challenged us not just in what he taught us out of the books, but he challenged us in just watching him, just admiring him and seeing how he related with the state, the national, the whole thing. I remember even going to conventions. I'd never been to a convention. I had no idea what it was all about, but I went with the Fairview Church for the very first time, and of course I've been going ever since. So that was some training. He would make sure that we were in some classes. He would make sure that we were in class, even here in Oklahoma City. So the schooling was always a big deal. But even just watching him deal with people, I watched him uh, actually just handle the situation, whatever came up. He felt like what he taught us was, whatever comes up and you're on the floor, then you as the leader, you as the person in charge, as the moderator of the meeting, you're the one that needs to handle it. In other words, people would stand with different wild and crazy ideas and thoughts, but it always centered back to the person who in that case was Pastor Reed, about how he dealt with them, and how he dealt with them in a stern manner, but it was also a loving manner, He loved those people, and the people loved him. And so they would take a lot of things that he said in a different way and manner than what I would say or somebody else would say, because of course he's the pastor. So I learned the value, the power of the pastorate, the power that is invested in the man that the Lord has placed over the flock. The Lord gives us special graces. He gives us mercies. I'm not saying that He doesn't give it to other people, but because of the fact that you are a leader, that He has placed you in that particular position, He will protect you. He will watch out for you. And I learned that a lot through Pastor Reed, because the Lord certainly watched his blind side, his back side, his front side. And the Lord was, because it shows if you be faithful to Him, He will be faithful to you. The faithfulness to the call is so important. And so those are just a few of the things that I've learned just coming up through the Fairview Church in those glory days. Now, I don't have a memory like Pastor G to remember all of those stories and things like that. He can do that. He can tell me some stuff. He always felt like I was favorite child or something, but as it were, we grew up learning the same things, sitting at the same tables, and some of my dearest friends, even today, were as a result of going through into the Fairview Church. And what I've learned and cherished in my heart as a pastor today, I could not divorce myself from the Fairview Church. I have a heart for that church and for what they invested in me all down through the years, man. So
Yes, sir.
that's why I wouldn't trade it for the world. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. So, then talk to us about how were you able, or how did you get to Tabitha Baptist Church?
It's a little bit of a anomaly. It's a little bit of a weird story. The church obviously was I think they had a meeting something like that Friday night. Okay, I don't know what happened at the meeting, but whatever happened, the pulpit was declared vacant, I believe. Pastor Reed and I, as I told you, you had to be faithful. So early that Saturday morning, we had to get up because he was speaking, I think, over in Tulsa. And anyway, so we went over to Tulsa, and I'm getting ready to get into my car to come back home. I mean, we made it back to the church, Fairview Church. I'm getting ready to go home, and just as I'm approaching my car, Pastor Reed walks out of the door, and he calls me back, and he says, "Listen, I just got a call from the deacon at the Tabitha Church, and they just need somebody to go over there and preach. Just need someone to go over there and preach. And so they need them tomorrow. Would you be available to go? Would you go on over there and preach?" And then he says, "And so then come on back home." Because at that point I was serving as the assistant to the pastor, to Pastor Reed. And I said, "Sure, I will." And that's really how I started. I believe if it had been someone else, he might have told them to go, but I was the only one down there at the time, and so he wanted to get the matter handled. So he said, "Just go over there." He says, "Jeff, just go on over there and preach, and then come on back home." Well, I did. I went over and preached my little Easter sermon, and I left. And for a few months, I heard nothing from them. I didn't know what happened, and I didn't pay as very much attention to it. And then finally, one other Sunday, sometime maybe 3 or 4 months later, they called back and said, "Well, listen, we want you to come back over." They called Pastor Reed again and said, "Send me back over here." And I came back over here, which I think was sometime in July or August or something like that. I came back over here. Now, by this time, you have to understand, I didn't have but 2 or 3 sermons. Now, this is the third time coming, so I had to really dig in the fire. I had to really get some things together. So I said, sure, I'll go back. And then I came back that third time. I'm sorry, what is it? The second time, and preached for them. And I think they must have had a vote. I ended up being one of the finalists. And then they extended the call to me on the first or second Sunday in November of 1980. What year was that? 19 and whatever 30 years ago was. And they extended the call to me in November, the second Sunday. We were going to be over at the Tabitha Church on the fourth Sunday anyway because of the homecoming. We
Right.
always we exchange services, and so it was. I'd heard about the Tabitha Church. I knew about it, but let me tell you. Let me back up. Also, I believe again that the Lord speaks to whom He chooses. I was riding down the street, riding down the highway one day, not knowing that much about the Tabitha Church, and my wife and she looked over to the church, and I don't know why she did. She says, "The Lord is going to put you in that church one day." And I, of course, blew her off. I'm like, whatever. Yeah, sure, whatever. So she says, really, the Lord is going to, He's shown me that He's going to, you're going to be pastor of that church. Well, how incredible was that for me? Because at the time, again, I'm working as a matter of fact, I'm working on the midnight shift.
Wow.
And so I'm working and all I am is tired. I wake up tired, go to bed tired because, I could never adjust my body to that. But also at that particular time, the reason it seemed so unlikely was because I was also up for a church in Arcadia.
Wow.
The church where Dr. Threed is now. I was also up for that. And listen, they told me later that I missed the vote by one
Oh,
vote, and so they eventually called someone else. And so as she says that to me, I'm thinking, yeah, sure, heck, I'm a little downtrodden and depressed and all of that because I really wanted it. I really felt like that would be a place where I could go and grow. And they said no. And as a matter of fact, they called one of my good friends, Dr. Ag, at that
yeah.
particular time, and they called him. And so I'm without a church, and she's talking about, well, you're going to be at this church. And I said, nah, I don't think so. And so the Lord brought it around full circle. And so on the third Sunday of November, I came and I preached my first message here at the church because they called on a Friday and asked could I come on that Sunday, and I've been here ever since. Third Sunday of November of that particular year.
Wow. Now, do you remember the first sermon you preached at Tabitha?
Yeah, I remember the text. The text was the sermon about goodness. The text was in Romans. May have been in Romans. I'm not sure. I still have some notes somewhere of that first sermon. I cannot. Weeping may endure for a night. That's where it was.
Wow.
Psalms 30:5. Weeping may endure for a night. I remember that and ain't did nothing with it, brother. I promise you, it did nothing. But the people were excited and very, very supportive, and just went from there. Been here ever since.
Well, you said something that's I think your testimony is very important to a lot of pastors and preachers because you talked about, you really wanted to go to this church. You miss it by one vote, literally just one vote, but you want to go. And there are pastors and preachers who we've all have been there where, especially when you're right there.
Yeah.
And you're on the cusp, you're right there. And then all of a sudden something happens to where it's like, no, we're going in this other direction. But how did you, and what advice would you give somebody of bouncing back from that disappointment?
That's a great question because it is important that you keep your eyes set on what the Lord wants and not what you want. For me, I just thought all hope was gone, man. Because again, I'm working overnight every night. I'm working and I'm tired of getting up. Working all night and then going to church all day and then sleeping a few hours and getting up doing it again. And so I thought this was an opportunity for me to at least break the cycle a little bit. And so I placed a lot of my hope in that. Wanted to go out there, and even though Arcadia was a little bit of a drive, I thought that that would at least open the door for me to be able to have the ministry that I felt like the Lord wanted me to have. And so I was quite disappointed. And the main thing was that I didn't quit. The main thing was that I continued to rely upon the Lord. I continued to do what I was encouraged to do at the Fairview Church. I didn't slack up. I didn't get angry or anything like that. I simply wanted to do the Lord's will, and so I just stayed focused. That was probably in the summer, and by the fall in November of that same year, the Lord had called me here. And so, had I taken that, then I wouldn't have been available to come here.
Yes, sir. And so, how were those first few years at Tabitha? You know, this is your first pastor. What were some of the keys? What were some of the things that you learned in those first few years at Tabitha?
The main thing I learned was to take it slow.
Yes, sir.
To take it slow. I'm the new guy. These people have been here forever. Okay, they've been here they've got bonds, they've got relationships, and so any changes that I was purported to make was something that would uplift the congregation rather than to, take away from the congregation. So one of the things I had to learn was patience. Um, because they had to be patient with me, I also had to be patient with them and not move too fast. And that can be in the way of moving people or putting people in positions or taking people from positions, uh, and even the movement of the church. And you have to pray and ask the Lord for every step you make. The song "Order My Steps," my goodness, that had to be the mantra for me as a new pastor, because I didn't want to make the wrong step, and I didn't want to make a step into something, a place that I would never be able to recover from. So it was about patience those first few years and loving on the people, coming to love people, because usually after the pulpit has been declared vacant, or after the people go through a span of time where they are in search of a pastor, you have to know that a lot of them are wounded, a lot are hurting, a lot are in different states of ill repair and things like that. And so I knew that coming in, it wasn't a time to try to come in and assert myself. It was a time to come in and just love the people, love on them. And so I did. I just loved on them, and sometimes to my detriment, because I think a lot of people will take advantage of that. But for me, it was important that they understood I needed to bond with the congregation. I needed for them to learn to trust me, and I needed to learn to trust them.
Yes,
And
sir.
that takes more than just a year. That takes more than just a sermon or two. They've got to watch you through some things. They've got to watch you through some how you deal with this, that, or the other, and be able to trust that you're going to be consistent about how you deal with it all the way through. So that's what it was about. The first few years was taking it easy, uh, being trying to move us, nudging us along, but not doing anything so catastrophic so as to bring so much change that the people weren't ready for it.
And you said take it easy. So how, from your experience as well, when you said take it easy, how did you construct your sermons and Bible study lessons in those first few years, because as you say, you're learning each other. So and I think sometimes, when we get to a place, because we see this, we see that, like, we like, I want to do series preaching, or I can't wait to preach this, because I've been wanting to preach it so long, and now that I have a spot, I can preach it. But as you say, they've been there long. You're the new guy, so you're
You're the
gonna.
new guy, absolutely. One of the things, again, my focus was probably uh, twofold at the time. I think my focus, which centered around my preaching and teaching at the time, was first of all love. I did.
Yes, sir.
Again, that's loving them and me loving them and them loving me, preaching love and them loving one another. There was a need for that healing and that kind of thing. But the second phase of what I was teaching was discipleship. Uh, what your responsibilities are to be a follower of Christ in a manner where, you know, I didn't want to be too invasive, but I did want to nudge them forward. So to learn and to grow, not just them, but me and myself as well. And so it was about love and it was about discipleship. Those were the types of lessons. What is my responsibility as a follower of Christ? What is my responsibility about stewardship?
Yes, sir.
Because I came in talking. We used to have a month of stewardship every year, where I would preach on stewardship, and that's serious preaching, I would suppose. But I would, I would get into to the whys and the responsibility of the believer, and not always met with great acceptance, but at the same time, I think that helped to formulate a foundation going forward for our church. So those were two of the components that I tried to include as I went forward. That is loving one another, loving the Lord, loving each other, and then also discipleship. And of course, that has a wide array of issues and topics that you can deal with from there. But that kept me busy for the first 3 or 4 years. I promise you.
I bet it did, but I think that's very important, to how do you approach your preaching, especially as you said, when the Lord shows you what this church needs, because as you can say, Tabitha is not Fairview, and
Absolutely.
so wherever a preacher is called, where they're called is not the church where they came from,
That's right.
and so is can we sometimes, just from your experiences, can we sometimes in a way get in trouble or frustrate ourselves because we're trying to put so much of what we learned and what we saw into a church where that's not this structure, that's not this environment.
I think the wisest thing that a younger preacher can do, especially a newer pastor can do, is to learn the difference between where you came from and where you are, because it worked over there and the churches may be next door. We're very close in proximity, but they're worlds apart. Worlds apart in biblical knowledge and worlds apart in experiences. And so I think you have to, what do they say? You have to bloom where you're planted. And so once I
Right.
got here, I even though I came from the Fairview Church, I had to have enough wisdom, even at 29, to know that this was not the same as the Fairview Church. This church is different leadership structure, and so you have to be respectful of the fact that you're not. And then two, I had to also be careful not to think that just because Pastor Reed could do it, that I could get away with doing it or say it or those kinds of things, because I hadn't been here nearly the amount of time that he has. And so not only were they different people, it was a different time set and they had different consciences. And so that's why you need that time for development and to be foundational and to love folks through it so that you can know exactly what they need. It's my contention that, for the first year or two, you're trying to find out what it is that they need. That's not something that you will know right off the bat. You've got to get in there and you've got to have experiences with them to see what it is that the need is for that church, and then ask the Lord to give you what it takes in order to meet that particular need. So that's why going in fast and making moves quickly is so ill advised. Is because you got to assess, man. You got to spend a year or two assessing what the needs are for the congregation, because people do change, and just because they on installation day they loving you and bringing you gifts, man. But listen, if you want that to change very quickly, you try to move them at a time and a place in a manner when they don't want to be moved, brother, and then all of the real person's real church comes out. So I think you have to, and then you need to form some alliances. There needs to be some alliances, some people that you can count on to tell you when you're right, even when others say you're wrong, and then someone that can say, hey, you're not right this time, Pastor. I love you, but you're not right. This is not right, and that you can still have a relationship with afterwards instead of blowing up. And now, there's some people. That's one of the biggest things, struggles I have of this day. People don't want to be told when they're wrong. Everybody thinks they're right, and because of that, I hold on to it. I will put my life on the line because I know I'm right, and you just can't, and then tear up the whole thing trying to be right. And sometimes it's just better to be more in tune with the Lord than to try to always be right, because there is a difference. So I think formulating that bond, formulated that and taking the assessment of the congregation, spending time, developing patience, and working. Even another thing that I was able to do was work on myself during that time, because again, being a young man, I had them. I had some of the older saints here when I came to tell me, listen, I was here when you got here, and chances are I'll be here when you're gone. You ain't gonna be here that much longer, that long, and I had to learn how to accept that and love them through that, and allow them to see that I wasn't interested in the short journey at all. I was here for as long as the Lord said so. And so they would challenge me. They would. There was a lot of challenging right beyond this door, right in this very office. I can remember one older gentleman. They gave me an installation, brother. They gave me an installation offering, and it wasn't but about $2,000 or $3,000, but it was a lot of money to me at the time. And he got upset with me. He got upset with me because he felt like I should give that money back to the church. And I don't know, I don't want to go too far into the business, but at the same time, just to let you know that there were obstacles. And I said, well, sir, no, the church felt the need to give it to me. And I do believe in tithing on whatever the church gives you, but I'm not, no, sir, I'm not going to get, and he got so irate. He got mad with me, got up, slammed the door. And then I asked him as he was walking out to leave my office. He was already on his way out, but he and I uh, never were able to get to the place where I felt like eventually, as he got older and I got older, we were able to at least talk and have pastor member relationship. But that just one of the things I'm talking about. People thinking they're right, and what they think is right, to heck with what everybody else is saying. And he really thought that was the way to go. And so I had those kinds of moments. I had people telling me that they didn't want certain things to happen at this church. Things that I was trying to incorporate. We ain't got no time, place, no money for this, that, and the other. And so we're going to bypass that. And I had to stand and say, no, rightfully and respectfully, we're going to move in the way that we said we were going to move. And therefore, you have to deal with the fallout of that, because everybody has somebody else in the church that's a follower of them. They're groups of people, and so they have somebody that's going to agree with them. And so you just have to preach and love your way through it. That's why I say it's so important. You don't have to go in with a steel broom or a steel pipe and beat people into submission. You don't have to do that. You just love them into submission, and like I say, work on yourself, because sometimes you are wrong. Sometimes I was just as wrong as two left shoes, but the Lord allowed me to have people around me who could say, "Hey, that's not cool. That's not the right way to do this," and I could see it, and I wasn't so blinded by my own righteousness that I could not see that I, in fact, was wrong, and I tried to do something different about that.
And yes, sir, and that's great advice already. And so
Mhm.
you've been there, I believe this year be 30 years.
Yes, this is my 30th year
30 years at one church.
at one church,
That's
same
that's
place.
another testimony. That's another
Yeah,
blessing. At one church.
yeah,
At
yeah.
one church.
On church. I
And
never thought
so
it would be it would happen. Yes, sir.
in 30 years at one church, you talked to us about the early years, but what are just some of those other keys or experiences that you've had in these 30 years that you would want to share with us younger pastors, younger preachers now?
I think the keys are, of course, my big key is to lay a foundation of love, because the longer you stay, the more you will reap from that. Love and respect. Respect the people, respect their traditions, respect. Now, I know that some traditions are need to be updated and maybe even put away, but respect the fact that they have them. And so, as a young pastor, and even molding into a middle-aged guy now, um, I think it's a matter of respect, because that'll do you well 10, 12 years, 15 years down the line. Uh, People don't know how much you love them, but they until they find out how much you care. And so you've got to respect the people, even in your disagreements, even in your places of disagreement space. Those spaces, if I could say anything, is respect the people. And so that will show up in your preaching. That will show up in your teaching and just your total conduct. Just so the behavior and the preaching should go hand in hand. But it's just a matter of respect, and always try to lift the people higher, which I think every pastor does. But I think where we lose people is they don't get the idea that we respect them and what they're about.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So talk to us about for you your preaching. Now, we've had the conversation, which has been fantastic, but about your preaching style, your preaching method, and like I said, I'm just one of the best closers. If I had his voice, if I had his
That's funny,
voice.
right?
But talk to us about your preaching, just your approach to Sunday morning.
Well, for me, it starts on Monday.
Okay.
Not always, but typically, or ideally, of course, you have some weeks but it starts on Monday, and I'm reading then, okay? I'm reading as to what I feel like the Lord, where He wants us to go, because as soon as I step down from the pulpit, and by the time I go home and eat dinner, and kind of go through and assess what has been preached that day, immediately now my mind switch changes to, okay, the next Sunday, let's get. So I start reading on Monday or Tuesday. I read different ideas, and I try to read some ancillary books. I don't always run to the commentaries
Right.
at the first place, because I understand that's exactly what that is. It's someone else's commentary,
Yes, sir.
uh, but they can be helpful at the end. But I want to read around the biblical story, the biblical narrative. I want to find out. You do word studies, find out. I asked the text question. I've got paper right here, what I'm working on for Sunday, where I've just bombarded the text with questions. And so I asked those questions Tuesday or through the week. Now Wednesday, I take the time to prepare for Wednesday evening.
Of course.
Okay, and so I don't necessarily do anything on Wednesday as it relates to the message, but on Thursday I get back to now trying to uh, after I did the word study, after I've done uh, the homiletics, because I'm also interested in packaging the sermon in a manner where I think that you can hand it to people and they can remember or learn from it, which means I try to have decent points. And so I work a lot on points or alliterations or whatever like that. But of course, the first part is the reading, and then the last part would be the commentaries, and then the in between the Bible study and the word study and the character studies and all the different types of studies that come along with it. I try to even include some of the historic value of it, and so I'm reading up until Thursday and Friday. I'm starting to hone in on what how to compose the message, which takes a long time, and for me anyway. Starting out with the great introductory statement, a great statement, whether it's an illustration or whatever, to draw the people into the particular text, and then to expose it. That's
Yes.
what it is. Expose the text. Uh, and that can be done through your shifts or movements or whatever
Yes,
you'd
sir.
like to call it. But to expose the text and then uh, apply it, expose it, then apply it, and then try to conclude with the summation of it all, and then that's the way I try to put it together. Of course, there are many steps in between that I may have overlooked, but for me, in a nutshell, those are the ways. That's the manner in which I approach every Sunday. Sometimes don't get it done in those daily. I think sometimes you have funerals, you have
Right.
obligations and things like that, but typically that would be how a week would go for me. Of course, it starts out with prayer. I didn't say that. I don't want people to think that I would dare try to come together and compose and work on a sermon without prayer. But after prayer, then that's when the process starts.
Yes, sir. And so, how would you encourage, younger preachers, younger pastors, as it relates to sermon preparation, sermon delivery, and building a library?
Oh man, all three of those are such heavy questions. First of all, sermon preparation. My advice would be um, to get a process now.
Yes,
Work
sir.
on a process every week. You should complete the process. Don't take shortcuts. Learn how to go through the process. Whether you're doing a narrative, whether you're going to do it expositionally, whatever you're going to do, but have a process each week that you want to complete, because again, that will help you in your preparation. You'll build up over time a mindset of what to do. Ask the hard questions and
Right.
answer those questions of the text, and look at it from like a Rubik's cube. You have to look at it from different perspectives, and
Yes, sir.
so ask the hard questions and deal with it and go through the process. I cannot tell you the value of library. Start working on a library right now as a younger pastor, as a younger preacher. Start working on your library, because you're no better than the books you read. You're no better than the library you have. Now, I know that they have the internet now, which they, of course, when I started preaching, didn't have, but we have the internet now, and that's okay. I'm a Logos user. I'm one who I would buy a book. I usually try to buy a book at least once or twice a month. I look for the sale books, of course, and I want to build my library, and I've got you know 4 or 5 thousand books now. Do I read them all? Of course not, but I know how to get to them when I need them. But I also uh, feel like how to deal with different occasions that come up in the regular church year, scriptures and expositions on if you're going out to do an usher's day, or what you want to be apropos of, deacon's installation, whatever you want to be apropos, and so you need to have books that support your point of view and the point of view that you feel like the Lord wants you to share. And so you read the books. So the library, I would rather buy. I'll tell you how much I love my library. I would rather buy a book than a suit, brother. I'd rather buy a book than a suit. And a lot of guys have it the other way, or a pair of shoes. But I'd rather buy a book because I've given away a lot of suits. I've either outgrown them or whatever, but I've never outgrown a book. I've never outgrown a book. So I think that with the idea of preparation, your library is the most sacred thing that a young pastor can have. The most sacred thing. So
Well,
I would encourage everyone to work on it. Yes, sir.
well, I was just gonna say I'll take some of those suits. If you
That's
you,
funny. That's funny. That
you
is
want
funny.
to pass on, I'll gladly take some of those suits off your hand.
That's
Without
funny.
no problem. I wear them good. I promise. I take some of those
I
suits.
think they'll be a little too big for you, brother. I think that I'm a pretty big boy, so I
Yeah, I
don't know.
take some of those suits, but so and those things I think are key because, like I said, I love to read. I mean, I got plenty of books even now that I haven't read, but reading is definitely fundamental. It's definitely important. That, and as you were talking about logos, doing more with logos now has been very helpful. But you said something else that's important, like my pastor always tells me, is that commentaries are good, but you ought to work the text first. Like
Yes,
Uncle Ricky said it like this. He said the same way God gave Max Cato a mind or all these guys, he gave you a mind as well. And
absolutely.
so I think sometimes commentaries are great, but now I'm seeing, just listening to guys like you and my pastor Uncle Ricky and others who said, make sure you do your own detective work because you're a commentator just as much as they are.
Absolutely, brother.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. And you need to work up to the point, not work from the commentaries. You need to work up to that. And that's just to see, actually, to compare, to make sure that you're in line, your thinking and what you come away with is in line with what uh, the Lord is actually saying. And so a lot of guys run straight to the commentary, but that should be the last resort prior to putting the sermon together and composing it, because you don't want it to influence your point of view to the point where you really just preaching the commentary. You don't really want to do
Right.
that. But I'm not saying it couldn't work. I'm just saying that the better part of this, as for your growth, is to preach and work and do the hard work. That's why the process is so important. You got to have a process. It's kind of like a football team. They go through the process every week. Film day, work on defense one day, offense. So if a preacher develops a process and not try to develop Saturday night specials, and I know that some Saturday nights you just have to give what you got, but I'm talking about overall, and for the typically you need to have a process and make time to honor that process each week, or each whenever the time of study is. Being that you work and everything, make the time to honor the process.
Yes, sir. And also, just talk to us quickly, and then we'll move to a couple others, then we'll be done. Just talk to us about the importance of education.
Tremendous. I tell you what, I attended OBU at it was the school, actually was Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary, and I tell you,
My alma
uh,
mater.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And just the eye open. There's so much of a world out there that you just don't know. You can't
Right.
know just being in the Baptist church or in being enclosed in one church or another. There's so much out there that you don't know and that you're not exposed to, and that your mind cannot be exposed to. Many ideas that they cannot be exposed to unless you are educated in these areas. And the hard work does pay off, writing papers and taking tests and challenging your mind and doing all kinds of different studies. And so education is one of the most important things. I think a call to ministry is a call to education, because you're dealing with so many people that are educated, number one, and then you want to rightly divide the word. And then there are so many ways in order to deal with things that are outside of the word. For instance, like I said, church growth, church maintenance, and all of those things that unless you get an education, unless you get out there and you are exposed to those things, you will be in a very small vacuum, and it will eventually close in on you. Because everybody, I'm going to a conference, a Black Pastors Conference in San Antonio in a week or two. I'm looking forward to that because it's been a while since the pandemic. I did go to the E.K. Bailey. Wait, what did they have this year? The E.K. Bailey this year, and it was great. And but I need a refill. I need to. So my deal is to learn as much as I can possibly absorb, to hold on to as much as I could possibly hold on to. And so I've got to go get it wherever it is. And that might not always be where I can afford it, but those things I can afford, I want to go and get it, even in our state and national, or even on the district level, man, wherever there's teaching, make yourself available to go and learn that, so that eventually when you can go to the conferences, or you are able to go, then that will only be a furtherance and not just the start. So I think the education is unbelievable. You can't do anything, and you can tell a man that studied in school or been to school versus a man that just kind of winging it. And I'm not saying there's anything. But the deeper things in God are shown through your education, your study, and your prayer life, and all of those things. And so I don't ever want to be a guy that stands up and have to say, well, I should have went to school. No, I want to be a guy that is known by your preaching, the depth of your preaching, the depth of your big idea, all of those things. Some preachers are just surface guys.
Right.
Okay, they just keep you on the surface, but I don't think that's the true and ultimate calling that the Lord has placed on us. We're called to be deep divers, and
Yes,
that's where we're going to have to take our people to, because it's not just about you preaching, it's about what they're hearing and their growth and their development. And so when you invest in your own education, you really invested in the people that the Lord has placed you over, or that you are preaching to. So it has so many facets to it that it's incredible. Education, and I've heard guys even get up, Pastor Brown. I've heard them get up and boast about the fact, no, I ain't been to nobody's school. I ain't had to go through all of that. I don't think it's necessary. And I cringe, because I know everybody can't come to school. I go to school. I know that. But you can take advantage of different things that come along to help you to be a better preacher, a better pulpiteer. I think you can take advantage and then have an ear and an eye that's open to hearing what the Lord has to say. So I take no stock in people who one of the things I do, and I joke about it very, very succinctly, and then we'll move on. When I go to a man's office, I'm always looking. And when I go into his office and I don't see any shelves and I don't see any books. Now I don't mean that I'm talking about a full-time guy, okay?
right.
I know as one who's bivocational. But if you go to a man's office and you see no books or no form of any books, I do know guys study at home, but I'm talking about those who don't. And if you go to their office and there are no books, then I don't necessarily want to sit under their preaching,
Mm.
because I don't think that they are, and that's not a blow towards them. That's just that I just don't think they would bring any,
Right.
anything that's not on the surface to me. So when you go to a man's office, you can always see the investment that he's made, and so the education he's made. That's why they put it on the wall. That's why they put their little degrees and things on the wall, not so much to show off, but to say, hey, I have been trained. I have gone through the process, and I am qualified uh, uh, by the university to preach. That goes along with my qualifications from God. So yeah, education is there's no way in the 21st century, man. Listen,
Yes, sir. Yes,
you
sir.
can't with this internet thing, man, where people can know what you. There's no way you can appeal to people and not be able to preach a word that has to be multifaceted, because you got to preach to so many different types of people. That's
Absolutely.
the other thing. You got so many types of people in your congregation who believe so many things, and they come from so many different backgrounds, and the word has to be centralized to at least package so that they can understand it. So no, you need every ounce of education you can get, to answer your question.
Yes, sir. Well, talk to us. How has it been for you, pastoring in a pandemic? I've watched you. The church has made some. Of course, I haven't been able to go inside, but just from watching on YouTube, seeing the new renovations that you've done at Tabitha. Because I've always said I love the size of Tabitha. It's always,
Mhm.
So, but
Really.
how has it been, just pastoring, preaching, especially like preaching every week when it was just you and the praise team just preaching in the camera? But how was it? How has it been? Just and now, of course, we're seeing people come back. Thankfully, of course, we're still taking precaution, but from going from full to empty, basically, then back. But how was it? How
I
has it
mean,
been? Let me say
listen,
it that way.
it's hard on a guy if he has a big ego. Now it's hard anyway to preach
Right.
to from going. My biggest deal was preaching to the camera. Okay, like so many guys before, preaching to the camera, because there's no feedback from the camera. You get it.
No.
You on your own. And what it has done is it has shown me, and it has made me have to adjust my timing,
Hmm.
because in the time for a call and response that you would normally have when people are responding back to what you said, you also have an opportunity to maybe prepare for the next thought or whatever. Well, you don't have that when you're just preaching to the camera, and so that has changed the cadence of the preaching moment for
Right.
me, and so I've had to adjust it in that manner. But as far as preaching and even pastoring in the pandemic, it's been quite challenging, and I don't bring anything new that anyone else hasn't already had to endure, but it's quite challenging, and I think it's challenging because of the effect it has on the people. Not so much the effect it has on the preacher, but the effect that it has on the people. Some are fearful, some are don't have as much faith as the other. Some don't believe that we should even be here, and then there are others who don't understand why we need to take the precautions. It's so many a variety of things, and so you've got to try and minister to the people. You got to try to every Sunday help them to put all of that stuff aside and focus on the Word of God, and that's been quite challenging. It's quite hard because people tend to sway. They tend to uh, go in their own different directions and places. When something like this happens, and I think the hardest part has been this idea of keeping them engaged, keeping the congregation engaged even those we have a lot of senior members here at the church who are just not coming. And I don't. One of the things I don't do is I don't try to challenge their faith and all of that. Say, well, you don't have no faith if you don't come. No, I respect. That's that idea of respect. I respect the fact that these are seniors and they just don't feel comfortable yet, and so. I allow them to understand and know that I appreciate them. So there are many other ways that you
Mhm.
can participate. We got the website and the Facebook page and the YouTube page. All of those things are up, and so we're doing the best we can to keep the people engaged as well as we can. But then at some point, the people just have to want to either take advantage of one of the other. Some people we have, some people we've lost. Some people didn't come back. I haven't heard from them, so I don't know what their particular place is. But so I just have to focus on those who are here and to keep those who are here engaged and do the best I can to communicate with them on
Yeah.
a normal basis.
Yes, sir. And you're and one and because I've been on Tabitha's website, of course, numerous times, and the theme I've always seen is connecting generations to God. And so, from especially from being the pastor, preaching and teaching, from starting from 1991 to 2021, you all these different generations coming
Oh
at
man.
one time. And so connecting them, especially how have you gone about, well, especially we just talk about preaching, teaching, just leading. And then of course, if you all don't know, Tabitha is partnered and they're going to start building it's a park, right?
A pocket park,
Yeah,
yes.
a part that they're doing. And so that's just another thing, which is awesome. That's just another thing that just connect those generations. But when we just think about preaching and teaching, of course, the way you preached in 1991, you can't preach in 2021. It's a
You're
totally
exactly
different,
right.
so how did you have to make those necessary adjustments?
Those pivots is what they call them. And that comes about by listening to the Holy Spirit, but also listening to the people. And because what worked and all of the dynamics surrounding preaching in 1991 when I came, so far begone now, and that so you have to preach to the times, to people that are what they're experiencing right now, and so the pivot had to be with the needs of the people, listening to them and hearing them, even what they don't say, what they're going through. uh, they're dealing with like I say, the fear now, and it's a legitimate fear because so many of them have lost they've lost loved ones to this pandemic, and I don't think we can be insensitive to it. One of the things that has helped to make me though even more sensitive is during this time I've lost my brother and my mom, and that made me more sensitive to the will of what people are going through. It's so much more to it than just having my way or getting my way. So life has shaped me and molded me. The congregation, times, and my own experiences have shaped me and made me understand and know when it's time to pivot off of some of the things, for instance, that we do on Sunday morning now. Uh, there's some things we do that was a part of what we were doing prior to the pandemic, and there's some things we don't do, and so we pivoted. We've done away with some things that we used to think and hold dear, that you just couldn't come to church without doing it that way. And so we found out, yeah, you can, and it'll be all
Right.
right that you are able to do that. And so it's a willingness to pivot, and then knowing when and how to pivot and what to pivot on. So it's been a it's been rough terrain. I promise you, it's been
Right.
rough terrain, but it's also been some rewarding places as well.
And before we close, you've been encouraging to so many, because not only have you preached through your mom's passing, your brother's passing, but I remember when I got the text when you had a medical. Of course, I won't go into it, out of respect.
It's okay. It's
Okay,
all right.
all right.
Yeah.
But I remember, and what's crazy is I was there the Sunday that week that happened because I was at Tabitha and you called me up, you let me do the prayer, and I never forget what you said afterwards. You let me do the prayer, we had a conversation, and then Tuesday, I know you said you were going to IC3. Then about that afternoon, I get a phone call that said, a text that said Pastor Mitchell's in the hospital. He had a heart attack. I said, what? I just seen him that
Yeah.
Sunday morning. We had just talked and I sit in the pulpit with him, which was great for me. But I was like, "What? He just had a heart attack!" So I couldn't believe it. And then you get back to the city, he had another heart attack. I'm like, "What's going on?" Like, but to see you come back after that. And I remember the Sunday because we all I know I was counting down. I said I can't wait till he gets back. Now of course you didn't preach long, but just to see you come back after that and with the same power, the same vigor, just as strong. It was like that was a blessing like no other because it was like this can't happen to Pastor Mitchell. That's my thinking. I know that was other guys like, wait a minute, this can't happen to you because but it happened. And we were. I know I was like, I was dumb. I was shocked, and I know others were shocked. But just that experience alone, like, how did you deal with that?
Listen, first of all, it was the whole process of that happening was only the grace of God, man. Um, yeah, I did. I was going to the IC3 conference, and I got to the room. This was before the conference even started. I got there that Monday morning, and felt these pains that were in my chest. And at first, I thought, well, I'll just lay down and it'll go away. And of course, it never did. And so for the first time in my entire life, I took it upon myself, and I don't know why. I called the ambulance. Well, I called down to the front desk and told them to get an ambulance to take me on to the hospital. I know I'm in a different state and all of that. I don't know, but I was able to go to the hospital, and I stayed there 7 days. Of course, my wife and my son came up, but there are other members who were praying for me, and so when I got back home again, that was on a Saturday or something. And the next Monday, I had another one, and they discovered I had some kind of a rare uh, heart disease or something where the valves in my heart were much larger, and so it would cause the blood to you know to coagulate and things like that. And so I was okay for a while until they told me, brother, that listen, you got two or three options, none of which seemed viable to me. But one was, we'll give you a heart transplant. I said, no, that doesn't make much sense. Or we can go to do an open heart surgery on you. Those words actually changed my life because I had to come to a point where I decided I'm going to trust you. I've been telling other people to trust you, Lord. And it was a frightening time because I didn't know. I'm getting all my business straight before I went, and they were able to get me to get myself together, and they gave me a few days to work on because they said it's nothing that you are ever going to outgrow, so you may as well deal with it. And they said you just need to have the surgery because if you have another one, lights out. So I did, and I went through that process, and I want everyone to know that in that there were so many people standing by and praying for me. Uh, my wife, my family, praying for me. Our church family, very supportive and praying for me. We had deacons out there, and then people across our city, and even across the nation who were praying. And but coming back from that, uh, that was a life changing experience. What it showed me, Pastor Brown, was that all the stuff that I think or thought was important it really isn't, man. It really isn't. And the miracle that God worked, is to God be the glory, because they told me that you really shouldn't be here. We had a guy, they told me about a doctor that had the same or something similar, and they couldn't save him. So they said, we're going to make sure we do everything in our power. And so they gave me excellent care. But it showed me so many things I was able to see, and to know that the Lord's work will go on, and you are proud. You ought to be happy to just be a part of it, because it certainly can move without you.
Yes, sir.
You don't have to be there every Sunday. You don't have to be the one preaching to them in the pulpit. So it was an humbling experience, but it was also one that helped change my motives, my whole outlook on ministry, and it encouraged me in some ways, and it had me to tear away from some other things in other ways. So, uh, but it was just a matter of recognizing the Lord, who was in complete control. I was able now to, instead of just talking about it, I was able now to actually live it. And so now, even today, it's uh, it's a thing to where I am. I'm eternally grateful, my friend. There's not a day that goes by and I'm not grateful to, first of all, our Lord, then my family, then our church. They were all great um, during this time, man, and I'm still living on those blessings. So, just I guess to answer the question, the way that you try to handle that is, number one, it was humbling. I realize it's not about me. It really isn't. None of this is about me. It's nothing about, it's got to be my way and all. No, 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 no. It's really about the Lord, and I had an upfront chance to experience that, and so that's been my take going forward. That's why I don't have to, you know, be, uh, out front all the time. In trying to be the best this or the better that, and that's really not important to me. I just want to be the best that I can be,
Yes, sir.
because of what I've been through. I want to be the best Jeff Mitchell, pastor of Tabitha, that I can be. It may not measure up much to any other church and any other standards, but that's what I want to be, the best
Yes.
I can be here. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Well, like I said, thank you again. Is there anything else you want to share? Anything else on your heart you want to share?
I just want to say thank you to you, and to encourage your heart and your spirit, because as I shared before with you, I check in on you every now and then. I go to your website, and your church services, I should say, and listen to your message. And I love the fire. I love the preparation. I love the fact that you are not just getting up there shooting from the hip. I appreciate that you take time with the text and you prepare, and it's evident that you read, and so I just want to tell you as well, keep up the good work, man. Keep up. I like what you're doing now, even these kinds of conversations, and excuse me, what you do online, and how you're out there. There's a presence for the Sunrise Church and their community online, and I appreciate that. And so, whatever we can ever do to help, or to even share with you as you go forward, please let me know, man. So you're doing a great job.
Oh man,
Appreciate it.
I appreciate it so much. You have no idea, especially coming from one of my heroes. Also, tell them about Tabitha. Anybody who may be listening who wants to visit our state, our city of Oklahoma City, let them know about Tabitha.
Yeah, man, come on by. We're here every Sunday at 10 o'clock a.m. We're usually done by the time a lot of churches are moving into their hymn of preparation. We're pretty much done. But yeah, come by, Tabitha. We're a church that we really are on the move. We're concerned about our community. We're concerned about the people are in the church and around the church, and come and help us do the work of ministry. we invite you. There's an open door here, and you'd be greatly blessed for coming and being a part of the Tabitha worship service. And so check us out. Come by. We extend an open invitation.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you all so much for listening. I'm gonna ask I'll just stay on for a couple quick more minutes once we end this broadcast. But I pray you've been blessed today. Definitely share the broadcast. Whoever is listening, we've had this has been a great one. Like I said, one of my heroes and mentors. You see, I'm smiling and cheesing.
That's
This is my guy right here. So I've enjoyed this broadcast today. So definitely like, share, and comment. And we look forward to seeing you next time.
bless you.